get to that talk, and as we always say, we might not delve deep into it, but perhaps we just crash on the surface to look at what bedevils us as a people. And to the point, this evening we'll be looking at the state of corruption in the country. We are lucky or delighted to say to have a representative from the EACC. Perhaps this will be the individual that tells us more in regards to numbers and what we look like or where we are at, what the country, is doing in terms of addressing the question of corruption. One of the reasons why we picked this conversation this evening is because there was a report that was coming from the United States, and they are accusing Kenyan officials of corruption in contract awards, in that this injures the possibilities of us having very many investors coming into the country. And we all understand just how much they contribute to the growth of the economy. Equally, just looking at the reports that are out here and the bizarre spending of taxpayers' cash by the public, bosses or perhaps the public officials. And then we ask ourselves, just where are we at this very point? Of course, just a reminder of what has played out in relation to this. One of the reports that was out or dished out, just getting the gentlemen to jog their mind, by the Daily Nation some time back, that is on the 5th of April this month, reminding us of the key things that, the different counties or public officers and leaders are actually doing that would rather appear as, not necessary, yet they're doing the same and spending lots and lots of money, the taxpayers' money. So we'll be looking at that, and we'll probably narrow it down to the question of bribery. Just how easy is it for you and me to say no to bribes? That's what we'll be looking at. Allow me to introduce the gentleman that I have on set that will help us unpack this conversation. Dr. Kevin Omai is seated right next to me. He's an officer, National Integrity Academy, that is of the EACC, that is Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in the country, as well as Evans Ochieng Auri, who is a driver. Evans will tell us just how it looks like down on ground. If you're going to move from point A to point B, if you're a driver, just how much do you need to do to make sure that then you are safe and you can get to the next point without having to rub the askaris the wrong way. We equally have Brian Olang, who's a human rights lawyer. Wakili, thank you so much for always hitting to our call. It's a pleasure to have you this evening. And Brian will help us look at the legal perspective on all this, because most of the graft cases, will always end up at the level of the courts. At some point in time, we kept on saying that maybe this is the point where we have a missing link in the question of dealing with graft. But is it the case as it stands today? Do these cases even get to that point? Gentlemen, asanteni sana for creating time to be with us. I want Evans to be the person to speak to us first. Kwanza atuambie maneno ya ground. Manake it is basically the ground thing that, we might want to accuse our leaders for, involving themselves in corrupt activities. But just how much do we allow the Kenyan mwananchi to say no to corruption, to say no to bribery? I mean, if I am going to get my papers moving, I have no choice but to toa kitu kidogo. And sometimes we want to say ni chai, we're just trying to paint a good picture of it. Evans, how is it like on the roads?
Mm-hmm. I'm Evans Ochieng.
Yes.
Oru. I'm a driver from 2010.
2010.
Yes.
Wamats were...
Okay, nilianza na driving kwa shule. Nikatoka hapo nikaingia kwa matatu kidogo.
Alright.
Nikatoka hapo nikaingia kwa lori. Sasa nimerudi naendesha Uber, town service.
Uber.
Yes.
Barabara inakaaje in all these scenarios, and I mean in terms of gari yako haiko roadworthy, lakini somehow uko kwa barabara, in terms of askari ndio ule pale, anaona wewe ni PSV,
Okay, shida yenye iko, nikianza situation yenye iko sahi. Shida yenye tunapitia ya kwanza, shida naweza sema inaanza na mimi, second inaenda kwa traffic police. Kwa sasa imekuwa ni kama ATM ya traffic police. Ukiendesha personal, mimi niko na PSV as a personal. Unajua sasa gari za Uber ni kama personal.
Yes.
But shida yenye tuko nayo ni ile polisi akiona tu hiyo jina PSV, anajua hapo kuna cash flow. Shida ya kwanza, mimi nimesimamishwa na polisi. Mimi as a driver, I'll park, niweke gari kando. Si lazima nitakuroka watu wa matatu. Akisimamishwa, first thing, utaona makanga ameshuka anaenda kwa traffic. Anaenda kufanya nini? Anajua hata kila kitu iko fine, lazima atatoa kitu kidogo. So shida inaanza na sisi wenyewe.
Right.
Second to that, tuseme tu hata kama uko free, yani gari iko na kila kitu, lazima polisi ataitisha pesa. Atakwambia gari, hata mimi mwenyewe nilishashikwa nikiwa na lori, lori ya kampuni. Nilimwambia unaweza vuta gari uende nayo. Sababu mimi as a driver, my documents iko valid, kila kitu iko fine. Gari ni ya kampuni. Haja gani nitoe pesa yangu kwa kampuni? Pesa yangu kwa mshahara wangu nilipe polisi yenye kitu yenye shida ni ya kampuni. So kitu inakuwa ni ile uoga yenye tuko nayo. Alafu watu wengi hawajui rights zao. Polisi akinisimamisha, first thing nitaweka gari kando, si lazima nishuke kwa gari. Lakini utapata mtu amesimamishwa ako na wasiwasi, unashuka kwa gari ya nini ushuke kwa gari? Nikisimamishwa na polisi, niweke gari kando, akuje angalie gari, afanye kitu, kama ni kuniuliza swali aniulize, nijibu. Nikiwa na makosa naweza jitetea hapo. In such a manner, nikishindwa kujitetea, option ya pili tuende station. Mkenya hataki kusikia story ati tuende police station.
Yeah.
Hatutaki. Story ya police station?
Afadhali umalizane hapa.
Tumalizane kwa ground, mimi niende shughuli zangu, yeye pia aende shughuli zake. Lakini ukiwa strict kabisa, mimi mwenyewe kuna wakati nilishikwa industrial area, kama nilikuwa na shida mguu. Nimepata pancha, nikaweka spare wheel. Hizi gari ndogo kuna taya tunaita donut.
Tule kade kadogo ya.
Hiyo taya. Kufika kwa hiyo roundabout ya industrial area hapo General Motors hapo. Nikasimamishwa nikawekwa kando. Aliniuliza mbona natembea na hiyo. Nikamuuliza reason ya hii mguu ni spare wheel.
Kumaanisha labda
nimechange sababu ya pancha. Mwenye nilikuwa nimebeba, jua ameweka gari kando, tukaanza kubishana. Mbona unatumia hiyo mguu ndogo? Nikamwambia nimepata pancha. Next nikidrop niende nifanye nini? Niende repair. Aliinsist nataka kuona hiyo mguu
nyingine.
Mimi nilishuka tu Rosafi nikaenda kwa buti nikamfungulia. Akaona mguu bado ni mpya, ni venye tu imekatwa. Na hizo unajua tu industrial area vitu kwa bado. Katwa but ni pancha but bado iko in a good condition. Sasa amerudi kuniuliza swali, hiyo taya nafaa niende nayo kilometers ngapi? Ndio nibadilishe. Nikamwambia I know niko na client, hii gari in town service. Siwezi enda more than 10 kilometers. Ndio ni drop at the same time ndio nifanye nini? Niendelee na safari. Akaniambia tuende station. Nikamwambia it's well and good. Tuende station. Tulienda kukaribia kufika police station, aliniambia ni park gari kando. Nikamuuliza umesema tuende police station.
Sasa ni muongee hapa.
Gari kando. Weka gari kando, upigie mwenye gari umwambie umeshikwa. Nikamuuliza umejuaje hii gari ni yangu? Labda gari ni yangu. Umejuaje? Kuna mwenye nafaa nimpigie. Umeshika gari, well and good. Tuende station. Unajua nilikuwa nimebeba oria. Noria jua ni kisirani hataki kungojea. Akaanza kushuka. Naambia mama kama unataka kushuka, tuacha nimalizane na polisi ama tumalizane na wewe kwanza. So venye ile harakati aliona huyu mama ameanza kuleta kisirani, akaniambia wewe enda tu tutaonana. Hivyo ndo nilienda. So, kama nilikuwa ile na uoga, ile uoga, niweke gari kando. Mimi niliinsist niingize gari police station, mbona niweke gari kando, tukaanza kubishana hapo.
All right, I'll come back to you. And before I get to you, Daktari, let's first of all listen into what Wakili has to say. And Evans mentions a very important factor here, that most of the Kenyans have minimal knowledge of their rights. And therefore, most of the times, in as much as this is your right to get this certain documentation from a certain office, you're left with no choice but kutoa kitu kidogo ndio vitu zisonge, including today the business that it is quite booming for people to get their passports, for people to get things even like their identity cards, simply because, well, maybe they are always lied to that until you do this, you cannot get this. It is going to be difficult for you to get this, and therefore, toa kitu kidogo ndio tukusaidie ku process vitu kama hivi. What is the importance of understanding one's rights if we're told we're going to deal with the questions of bribe, if we're told we're going to address corruption?
I think, even the Bible itself says that people die because of lack of knowledge. And I think what he's saying is something which is true. And I deal with such cases almost, I think almost twice every week or something happens every week. Like I'll have a Uber driver call me, nimeshikwa hapa wakili nisaidie. And then you listen to the story, I'm like, where is the offense here?
Where's the offense?
There's none. And some of us who are a little bit knowledgeable. Like sometimes I wait to be arrested, it doesn't happen. I don't know if they profile people. But I've also fallen victim to such things. Where I remember sometime, I think 2 years ago, I was traveling to up country in Migori. Then I get stopped because I had a cracked windscreen. So, this guy did not know who I am. And he tells me, umejua umefanya makosa. I said, yes, I know. It's an offense. Then he tells me, shuka inje kuja hapa nyumba. Then I went behind. I was just in a short, like a normal December holiday.
Yeah.
So he tells me, sasa hapa lazima uache kitu kidogo. Nikamwambia, I'm not giving you anything.
Yeah.
And there's no offense I've committed. Then he says, having the windscreen and all this. I told him, okay, fine, but I have an abstract. Then I show him that. Then again he starts, lazima tuende mbele. I refused. So eventually he called the senior officer. I think eventually I got tired and pissed off, and I told him, actually you don't know who you're speaking to.
Right.
I introduced myself. Then after that is when, makosa, as if now the offense is no longer there.
Yeah.
You can leave. And people fall victims to this every single week. And I think if you check every bribe paid, of course there are those who commit offenses genuinely. But there are those who don't even have an idea whether they've committed offense or not. So I think it's important for us to have such shows where we come and explain to people, here are the processes even when you're arrested. And there's nothing wrong with getting arrested.
Right.
I mean, these criminal offenses were meant for human beings. And you can go to court, explain yourself, and the circumstances in which these things happened. You see, assuming what happened to him and the issue of the tie, which is not an offense, by the way.
Yeah.
Such a scenario, if you go to court, in fact, they won't even want you to get to court. The moment you realize and you insist, I want to go to court.
Yeah.
But I think Kenyans also need to take the initiative of at least reading and learning more. And you also, I think also as a media, you need to take that responsibility and have such shows where we can share knowledge with Kenyans and tell them, actually, this is what the law says. When you're arrested, actually, this is a procedure. And there's nothing to fear about going to the police.
We're going to come back to you and find out whether indeed, even if they have the knowledge of what the laws say or dictate, whether they abide by these very laws. Because, I mean, there are processes that you're very clear about. But even still, utambiwa wewe toa tu chai. And in your own innocence, so in the best way possible, you just toa your chai, with a clean heart. Kurudisha mkono. I don't know whether then that would be declared as bribery or corruption, or tuseme tu tumerudisha mkono. Before then, we come to you, Daktari, and on constant occasions we get to see the EACC giving us survey reports in relation to the state of corruption in the country. What is the importance of us knowing some of these reports, if at all the citizens themselves are going to be part and parcel of propagating these acts of corruption?
Thank you, Linda. I have to say where I come from. I work for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and they have a training arm which is called the National Integrity Academy, where we undertake specialized programs educating Kenyans on the evils of corruption.
But you have heard these people saying that Kenyans
will address such.
Right.
To the question that you have posed, periodically the EACC conducts surveys and collects information from Kenyans. For example, the recently released report.
Right.
It's a survey that was targeted to households in the Republic of Kenya, and then it gave information on the levels of corruption within the country. The importance of such a report, it informs a strategy and the areas within which we need to focus as an enforcement institution with regard to matters anti-corruption. And then how resources should be put in place, to which areas they can be dedicated, and then areas under which priority can be given, as I've said. Also, it gives information to general citizenry on what they expect when they go to look for services from government institutions. For example, from the report you saw, mostly Kenyans complain of what they see, and the police has been marked as the most corrupt institution in the country, because it mostly is what Kenyans interact with. So in such an incident, you get that whenever Kenyans go to seek service from such a body, they really get to understand on the kind of service they expect and how they can be able to cooperate with the enforcement institutions. It's good that from such a reports also, we give important information on how Kenyans can be able to report matters corruption. So whenever Kenyans, for example, go to immigration, they go to the police post to look for a service, they encounter this, we have some bold Kenyans who usually come to us, report, and then we take them through on what is expected. They cooperate with us. Sometimes we conduct arrests, and then we prosecute such a rogue people, rogue police within the force, and then we address corruption. So it's important in both aspects, to us as enforcement institutions and then to the general citizens.
Okay, and we'll be coming back to you to just find out how much more we might need to prosecute if at all this is going to be a successful fight. I'm looking at one of the elements of the reports that you release, and it dictates that around 31% out of 100, or 31 out of 100 Kenyans are willing to give a bribe to get employment. Why? Is that not corruption? Of course, these are some of the questions that we ask. And not just employment, but perhaps the small things. I know that we are on television, and maybe we might not want to paint ourselves black. But have you not gotten to a point where mwenyewe Evans ambayo labda uliona hapa sasa kujitoa ni lazima ni release hiyo 1K, ama hapa kujitoa nipeane 5K ndio nipate hiyo license electronic imestampiwa PSV na kadhalika? Na kuna noma. I mean,
okay, what mimi hakuna place nishatoa bribe.
Ai, wewe ni mclean namna hiyo.
Okay.
Usiite bribe, sema tu kuambia mtu asanti, nisukumie, sukuma hiyo kitu.
Mtu akifanya service poa, ile kujitolea, useme tu daktari umenifanya poa, chukua iendo kunywe chai. Lakini ile toa hii pesa
ndio ufanyiwe.
Recently, which I think kwa Kenya wengi wame experience. Mimi nili apply good conduct mwezi wa 8 tarehe 13. Ikamaliza 1 month, nikarudi mwezi wa 9 tarehe 24. Nikaambiwa bado hajafanya nini?
Haijakuwa ready.
Nikaambiwa nirudi kwa cyber, nitoe ile ya kuchukua vidole, nirudi. Ile harakati ya kurudi, nikamwambia kama unataka hii kitu itoke haraka, fanya nini? Changamka. Nikamwambia sina haraka nayo sana, but it's okay. Akachukua fingerprints, nikaacha documents hapo. Unajua ilikuja lini? Januari tarehe 20.
Karibu mwaka inaisha, unafaa kuchukua ingine.
Kama ningekuwa na haraka nayo, nafanya nini? Juu sikuwa na haraka nayo. Nikasema tu kulingana na kazi yenye nafanya, good conduct lazima
ukue
nayo. So nilitumia ile print out ile wamestamp. Ndio nilitumia mpaka Januari. So una hizi vitu nile tu corruption inaanza na sisi wenyewe, halafu na ile uoga. Ndio watu wengi wanakonga na uoga. Unataka kwenda mahali, hujui processing ni aje. So itabidi tu uchangamke, unakwambia fanya hivi iende haraka. Lakini ukiwa strict, kama una haraka, ukiwa strict nayo itaenda tu through.
Wakili, ushawahi kuwa na haraka?
That's an interesting question. You know, the way our system is designed, it's designed in a way that it's easier to corrupt than to follow due process. Ukiangalia kama, you know, a good conduct is only good for 1 year. So you apply, even by the time it comes out, it's already useless. It's expired. So you're required to apply again. Another scenario, you want a passport. Why would it take 8 months to 1 year to print a passport? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's a simple booklet. So the system is designed in a way that it's easier for you upeane hiyo kitu kidogo ndio
vitu zisonge. Wacha tuchukue break. Let us take a short break, and then we come back to that very point, because you probably have gotten to a point where, you know, you genuinely need this document haraka sana. And the only way that itatoka haraka is for you to give out 5,000 bob or 2,000 bob or even 10,000 bob. What choice are you left with? How can we castigate our leaders if we ourselves are engaging in these acts of corruption? After this break.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue mpaka nimetoa hii.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you know, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking,
nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
To finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus niko niwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia.
We're back, and we're still, you know, just trying to look at some of the experiences that we probably have had. And you know, you have been pushed to a point where you're left with no choice but kusema, you know what, shika hii so that I can move to the next step. It might not look like a good thing, but sometimes Kenyans say they're left with no choice. That's why I asked that question, are we a country of toa kitu kidogo? And that's just it. Dr. Kevin Umai is here with us, Evans Ochieng as well is here with us, and Brian Olang as well is here with us tonight as we talk about this. Brian, I took it away from you. I hope you had finished highlighting what you wanted to, as I asked whether ushawahi kuwa na haraka and you were left with no choice.
I think, you know, almost every Kenyan has been in that situation.
Yeah.
And you can imagine about, I think, 3 years ago, I was coming from my shags, heading to Nairobi. Then I get stopped slightly past Narok by traffic because I was speeding. And then, you know, the only options you're given, either, okay, now pay cash bill, and then you come back to court. Now this is a Sunday, I'm supposed to be at work on Monday. So you're told to come back to court on Monday. So I have to drive back to court or come back to Narok to attend court. So you see the way the system itself is designed. It's designed in a way that it's easier for you to pay the bribe as opposed
bail yourself out.
Yes.
As opposed to
like, because if it was easier for me to pay cash bill there and attend court in Nairobi, it's okay. But now if you're telling me to go back to Narok to court in Narok, I'm heading to Nairobi, I have work, I have commitments. So, you know, it's designed in a way that it's easier for you to actually pay the bribe as opposed to following due process.
Right.
Yes.
And therefore, in this case, utasema afande unataka aje kuja hapa.
Afande sasa tunasaidiana.
Okay, utanisaidia aje. This is what is happening. Excise and futility, whatever it is that EACC is doing, and all these other agencies that are tasked to deal with corruption?
No, we should not say it's an exercise in futility. The EACC is doing so much with regard to fighting corruption in the country. And from what they are discussing here, one aspect is on enforcement with regard to fighting corruption, where we look at those people who have engaged in corruption, and then maybe if the case is civil or it's criminal, people are taken to court. And then the other thing that we usually do is on prevention, where we usually go to institutions and then we conduct systems review with regard to the way they operate, and then we recommend for better ways for them to do their work. And then we conduct public education. That notwithstanding, Kenyans, by culture, they are susceptible to doing wrongs, and then so easy to give bribes. I want to be very clear from the beginning that the laws that we have in the country, especially the Bribery Act, prohibits and lists giving of a bribe as an offense. If any Kenyan from any sphere of life, be it a driver, be it a lawyer, be it whoever he is, any private citizen, whenever he gives a bribe, he commits an offense. Right. That's under the Bribery Act. So that Kenyan must strive and refrain from giving a bribe, because you know the issue to do with corruption is a chain. So if we get to break the chain in the causation process, then corruption will not be able to happen. So if an ordinary Kenyan says that I not be able to give a bribe because the law has prohibited that or has prescribed that to be an offense, then corruption will not be able to happen.
How do you get to know that this is a bribe and this is not a bribe? When you are on the road and the policeman or perhaps the official of NTSA, if not Kenha, is asking you for some money, and they're actually showing you the camera and they're telling you, unajua sasa umesimama hapa, you're not supposed to stand here, the cameras have seen you, ule mtu kwa control room anakuona, sasa tufanye aje? Sasa lazima utoe 10,000 bob ndio tukuachilie uendelee. They're not even telling you ati utaenda kotini kesho. They're not even telling you that this is wrong or this is what. They're actually telling you this is the option that is there. So at this point, you're not so clear whether it's bribery, whether it's corruption, or whether it's the right thing to do, because then you are dealing with an official or a public official.
Thank you. I'll come to the second aspect on bribery. That is receiving a bribe.
Okay.
Public officers, be it a policeman, be it somebody who is giving a service in an health facility, they are paid. And when you look at the public service salary structure, their remuneration is mapped against the kind of service that they are supposed to give. Are you saying that? So as a citizen, whenever you are on the road, for example, if you are a driver, if a police officer has flagged you, he is doing his work, then you going to your pocket, giving somebody who is doing his work an extra coin, it is an illegality.
Okay.
So the thing that has happened is that Kenyans like baptizing wrongs by calling it good names. Corruption is corruption by any other appearance. So even if you call it kununulia mutu chai, that is bribe giving. Kurudisha mkono. Hiyo ni kupatiana hongo. Are you saying that?
Right.
So the only thing that we are advocating for is to tell Kenyans that let public officers, and you see it is so injurious to us when we come to such a station, and then even from our talk we see everybody's complaining, for example, of a police officer. Look at it like this, Linda. This is a person who has been given a government marked uniform. Police officers are given uniforms by government. He's given a shoe by government. He goes, he carries a gun, a rifle or a pistol given by government. He stands on a government road built by taxpayers and then goes ahead to be collecting bribes. Are you saying that? It is so wrong. Instead of facilitating service. So bribery is bribery by whichever name you can be able to call it.
Quickly, before I go back to this gentleman, they have highlighted that concern of the fact that Kenyans have no knowledge of what is right, what is wrong, what is their right, what is not their right, and all that. And therefore, they are susceptible, or perhaps they're vulnerable to some of these cases of bribery, even without knowing. What is the role of ESCC? And now that you say you are under the academy, in terms of making sure that Kenyans are enlightened about their rights, so that when they meet these cases on the road, or they encounter these cases on the road, they know how to go about it to save themselves or to get themselves off the hook?
Okay, like I mentioned, The EACC mandate is threefold by summary. Number one is on the enforcement, where we usually conduct arrest and then take people to court. In the event that it is a criminal case, we prosecute and we investigate, and then we take the case to the public prosecutor, who usually prosecutes on our behalf. We give the evidences, and then if a conviction comes, it is good. If a judgment is given and then we are not satisfied with its charge, we make an appeal. Then the second thing that I've said is on public education. From all spheres of life, we educate Kenyans on what corruption is. Like Brian said, by what Brian said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. People indeed do not understand what corruption is. And the laws that we have, for example, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and then the Bribery Act, plus the Leadership and Integrity Act, have listed what is called corruption or what is called unethical conduct. Unethical conduct also results to corruption. So we have always tried to engage with Kenyans, be they the border people, be they the drivers, through the Matatu Owners Association.
To ask where, why, when. Maybe the drivers are going to tell us, maybe the gentleman will tell us whether they have encountered or perhaps they've had a chance to meet an EACC officer who's tried to train them on the basics of survival, if not
I can assure you that under so many instances, they have always encountered us. If we are not on the radio conducting public education, we are in a hall somewhere meeting their leaders, and then they can be able to bring some of the people under them so they can be able to engage. We also conduct such education to public officers themselves. So whoever engages in corruption, it is a personal decision. Not that such a people has not been informed. When you look at our newspapers, they usually write, even from the EACC itself, it issues clarifications. We usually give opinions to public officers and even to the general public, and we even give updates. So I believe the strategies that we have always put in place, even in terms of corruption prevention, that is going to public institutions, looking at the way they do their work, the procedures that they have, the systems that they have put in place, where gaps are existing, and then we strengthen by advisories, improving on the systems of engagement. We all do such activities.
All right. Evans, before we come to you, Wakili, legally speaking, where would you say we stand at in terms of addressing these cases of corruption? Because there are instances where it's not even, and I'm looking at, again, a report by the EACC that says corruption clearly mentioned that the Ministry of Health, that is the EACC report on corruption, mentioned that the Ministry of Health and that of Internal Security lead in cases of corruption in the country. For example, it was mentioned that the traffic police to take bribes, and of course this has continuously contributed to the increase in road accidents. What strategies have you put in place? That will be a question that goes to him. But when you look at these spaces that have been mentioned, these are spaces that involve Kenyans almost on a daily basis. We have talked about the cases of corruption here and there. Lately, we witnessed that the government was trying to address this, and the IG was there as well as the CS. We're talking about health. Most of the Kenyans will want to seek health services. It gets them to a point where it's actually them that are proposing a bribe as opposed to being asked for the same. Where do we stand at? Where are we legally in terms of addressing this, if at all we're going to get to zero?
I think getting to zero will be, I think it's a near impossibility, even if you look at the countries around the world. So there'll always be one or two elements that are corrupt, and that is why we have laws there. So we'll always have people who are committing crimes. But in my opinion, I think the issue of corruption, the way our system itself is designed, it's designed in a way that it's actually easier for you to bribe. And I think this frustration is done deliberately. Because I don't understand why it takes 6 months or 7 months to get a passport. I don't understand why it would take 1 year to get a police clearance certificate. So it's done in a way that the only option you're left with, because you need these documents. You can imagine now, you want to travel abroad for school, or you have a scholarship. You're required to travel by September. Now you're being frustrated. This week you're taken to this office. Next time you're told to, apply again, do all these things. So the system itself is designed in a way that it's actually easier for you to pay a bribe as opposed to
you're following the right
procedures. And then when it comes to cases that go to court, of course, EACC has several cases and several even high-profile cases that have been taken to court. But I think what Kenyans see and what we will also love to see, you know, there are these what I would call high-profile cases where you see, for instance, the Ministry of Health mentioned, the Ministry of Interior mentioned. If you could have, like, for instance, the CS arrested and actually convicted of these offenses, then it will reduce the level of corruption in such offices. So it's also important, as opposed to going for the small guns, it's also important that you also aim your bullet at the big people, at the big boys and the big girls in the system. Because you see, I would equate EACC to, you know, you can imagine you have a German Shepherd in the house, trained to guard. But now it's
an element of beauty and a pet.
It looks big, massive, it looks aggressive. But now, whenever somebody walks in, when Olang walks in, it comes wagging his tail. When this other one, so it decides who to buy it, who to buy it, and who not to buy it. So that is the only issue I think Kenyans have with the EACC. And it's something which I believe, if they were to target if everybody was to be treated equally before the law, if these high-profile cases, and we see them from Aurora and Kimorer, all these matters are either withdrawn. Some of them, it's not even their fault. It's probably lies with another office. But it's important, instead of not only arresting this officer who is receiving a bribe on the road, because even if you arrest them, somebody else, trust me, in less than a week, there's somebody else collecting money there.
Right.
So this sequence continues. So do we go to the root cause of the problem? And do we even go higher up the rank and see even if the OCS, the OCPD is involved, who else is receiving this money? Yes. So I think that way, then you're able to cure this particular issue.
All right. And today there was a story that we have run. The opposition leaders saying that government is using the EACC to target them. We'll be coming to that because when, of course, there are all these accusations of, there's someone who's being treated special in all these cases. If we're going to raise alarm on individuals or certain offices, yet we do not get to the bottom of it and they're cleared somewhere along the way, then we do not know whether we should have any form of faith. You want to say something?
I want to say something about that. And I think when opposition leaders raise these particular questions, I think they have every right to do that. And even as Kenyans, we need to raise these concerns. Because you found that when this regime came into power, there are several leaders who are facing either integrity issues or even other criminal offenses. All these matters were withdrawn. So in a way that if you have a connection with the government, then your matters are withdrawn. Then if you are on this other side, like assuming Mwangi Wairia was in UDA now, would he be having these issues? If Oparanya was in this other side, would he be having these issues?
But you are a legal expert in this case, and therefore some of these cases upon withdrawal, there are reasons why, the reasons are accorded as to why they have been withdrawn. Well, lack of enough evidence, EACC did not give watertight evidence to convict this individual, and therefore the cases are withdrawn. Can we stand here and confidently say that these cases are normally withdrawn just because so-and-so knows so-and-so, or so-and-so is in the right books of government and all that?
Before a charge is presented in court, it means there is actually evidence that this thing means there's a threshold. It means, and in a criminal case, it's supposed to be beyond reasonable doubt. It means the EACC have conducted investigations, and they're confident whatever they have, a court is able to reach a conviction. But now you find a case where, now because this person is either politically connected or something, the matter is withdrawn in a way that is not even procedural. And in such cases, I would blame the EACC. That is the DPP now that comes in and withdraws these matters. So they have conducted the investigation, they presented this matter to court. Because EACC, remember, does not have the power to prosecute.
Yes.
It will only conduct investigation, of course, refer the file to the DPP who will now prefer charges against this particular person. So if you are taking responsibility, it should be collective. Yes.
Wow.
I wanted to give a rejoinder to what he has said.
Yes, right to reply.
It is. I want it to be very clear that every case reported to the EACC, it's a case listed for investigations. And internally, we have processes through which such cases go through. Cases can be prioritized depending on the public interest, which is with regard to that case, the amount involved and the people involved. The problem that we have and that Kenyans must address, including Brian as a lawyer, is the issue of politicizing the war against corruption. If an allegation has been placed against an individual, it doesn't mean that that individual has committed the offense. Why not give an investigating agency some space to investigate, to get these facts right, and then possibly to recommend for prosecution if that case has got the evidence that he has indicated. Are you saying that?
Right.
Yeah. In the event that there is no evidence, because criminal cases have got a threshold. And you see, even internally, we have mechanisms through which we sieve and see that this case has got, we have a legal department that looks at the issues with regard to a case and then okays the case for forwarding to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Are you saying that? So the biggest problem that we have is the problem of Kenyans not ready to say no to politicization, where institutions are supposed to be given space to exercise their mandate freely. Are you saying that? And then to give recommendations with regard to the outcomes. An investigation process is a very objective process because within the criminal justice system, there are ways in which you can be able to see this one, it was not an objective process, this is an objective process. I just wanted to give a rejoinder on that to be clear that even if it is a case where a public officer, for example, has conducted himself in a way that does not reflect honor to that position, it's a case worthy investigations, and somebody who has stolen billions. The only challenge is the way evidences can be collected. A small case, evidence is very direct.
And perhaps I'd want to I know you want to give a rejoinder, but please let's just allow Evans as well to give his sentiments in relation to this. Tumeona kesi nyingi zimeachiliwa, Evans, left, right and center. EACC ndio wanaanza kublow hiyo whistle. By the time imefika kotini, before you know it, tumefunga macho, tumefungua, hawa watu wameachiliwa. Hakuna kesi ya kujibu. As a Kenyan, what does this make you feel? I mean, does it give you the confidence that maybe kuna systems ambazo zinafanya kazi, ama tuseme tu tuachilie loose, tuendelee na hii maneno ya corruption ama bribery?
Okay, venye naweza sema, venye brother yangu amesema, kuna tuasium, kuna wakubwa na kuna mdogo. Yeye mwenyewe amesema, mwenye ameiba pesa kidogo, kesi yake ni direct na kupoint hivyo tu direct. Lakini Brian ameiba millions,
lazima tufanye,
tutazunguka hivyo kwa kona, tuende Kariobangi, ndio tukuja wapi? 47. Lakini mimi nikiiba 100, utakuja kwangu direct. Sasa zile huyu anazunguka kutafuta evidence venye Brian aliiba million, anaizunguka hivyo, lakini pale nyuma place anazunguka kuna vitu vinafanyika. Of which every Kenyan anashajua. Kenya ukiwa na pesa, everything is possible. Hata hapa mali tuko tukisema sasa tunataka kujenga barabara hapa, tutajenga. Money talks in Kenya. That's it. Hakuna story nyingine. Money talks. Example, kuna pombe iliua watu Murang'a. Ilikuwa police station. At the end of the day, ilishikwa ikalekwa police station, ikatoka ikarudi kwa bar. Polisi mwenye alishika hii pombe anapatikana na kunywa huko. Who should we blame now? Tuta blame nani? Mimi mwenye nakunywa, polisi mwenye alishika, ama mwenye bar? Tuta blame nani?
Ngumu.
Corruption. Ikishaingia hapo kila kitu. If you have money, you go everywhere.
How much do you take time to just enlighten yourselves, kujua zile vitu ambazo, especially kwa ile line ya kazi unafanya, so that you're safe? Vile umesema mara mingi, kama unajua haki yako uko safe, because EACC wanasema they get to engage with people kuwapatia knowledge on how they should operate on the roads and wherever it is. Wewe mwenyewe kama Mkenya, how much initiative do you take, or just how much time do you take to get to understand what it is that is your right on the roads or in any other capacity?
Unajua, in a traffic offenses, ukiwa driver pale, ukiwa driving school, utaambiwa ukifanya hivi, hii ni makosa, ukifanya hivi, hii ni makosa. So kitu yenye tunakuanga nayo sisi kama madrivers wa Kenya, because nimekuwa kwa hii business for a longer period. Ukishajua your line, maintain it. For which hata traffic police wenyewe akikuja kwako, akikuuliza swali, kitu yenye tuko nayo shida kubwa sana wa Kenya, ukiona man in uniform,
natetemeka.
Watu wameanza kutetemeka. Kuwa na ile courage ya kujibu maswali yenye atafanya nini, atakuuliza. So ukiwa unajua line yako ya duty, unajua hii nikifanya hivi, I'm on a right direction. Nikifanya hivi, I'm on a wrong direction. So sasa zile unafanya kitu ukiwa wrong, bahati mbaya uangukiwe na polisi. Obvious unajua hii kitu nilikuwa nafanya ni
wrong.
So kitu ya kwanza itakuja kwa mind, nimuulize venye tutafanya nini? Mkubwa, makosa ishapatikana. What should I do? Rudi kwa gari tuongee. Hii kuongea kwa kujua sasa mimi ndio nimefanya introduction na hii kufanya nini? Kuongea. Second to that, sijui kama Wakenya wengi wao wanaogopa kulala sel. Nimeshikwa, nataka kuingia ndani, nitalala kesho ndio nipelekwe kotini. Kuna brother yangu alishikwa wakati wa corona hapa Pangani. Kufika Pangani walikuwa like 17 people.
Right.
Wakaambiwa kila mtu atoe 2,200 na mask ni 20 bob. Kijana alikuwa na enda job, ana pesa. Akanipigia simu. Nikamwambia mbana, mimi sina pesa. Wanataka pesa ngapi? 2,000. Nikamwambia fanya hivi, cancel kazi, enda huko. Kesho uende Makadara. Unajua alitoa kwa pesa ngapi na Makadara? 170 shillings. Only kulala ndani. So shida yenye tutakuanga nayo sisi wa Kenya ni ile tu haraka na kulala. Mimi mwenyewe nishalala Sauri Moyo police station sababu ya hizi makosa ndogo ndogo za barabara. So ukiwa na ile courage kukaa mahali, kaa hapo ukishajua shida nilifanya makosa. What will happen nikipelekwa kotini, unaona?
Okay.
Lakini una mtu like example.
Tukimalizia,
which hata sijui, nitauliza boss wangu hapa nimuulize, is it okay mimi mwenyewe as a driver nikishikwa nimefanya makosa? Is it okay gari ingizwe ndani, mimi pia niingizwe ndani? Ndio hiyo kitu bado ndio hapo sijaielewa. Unashikwa, dereva anawekwa ndani, gari pia inawekwa ndani. What was the main reason kuniweka ndani, gari pia niko ndani? Like Pangani ukienda, Pangani ukishuka sa driver, gari ndani, dereva ndani, makanga ndani.
Wewe ungetaka labda uingie ndani, alafu wengine wabaki gari
gari labda si yangu na Brian, gari simesimama. Mbona gari ya Brian isimame? Makosa ni labda
ni yako kama
inafaa hapa tujue ukweli. Gari ikishikwa si wote tuwe ndani ama gari like
gari ishikwe
sana matatu wakiwa na operation. Tunajua wengi wao makanga anatoroka naacha dereva. Uzovi asikipatikana hapo ndani,
pia yako
ndani, dereva ako ndani, gari ako iko ndani. Pesa itakuwa hapo pesa kubwa cause example.
Tukimalizia Masai imekimbia sana.
Sorry. Shida yenye nakonga nayo tena ni unapata like Kanjo akikushika Brian, obvious watataka hiyo gari vutu. Mbona gari vutwe na wewe dereva uko ndani hujatoroka?
Brian, answer that even as you respond to what it is that Daktari had said as we come to a close.
I think allow me to respond to Daktari, then I'll come to him. I think when you mention or when I talk about, and I'm not politicizing these cases.
Yeah.
What I'm just trying to say is this: why wait until somebody leaves office? For instance, now if a leader is in UDA is corrupt, why can't you arrest them now?
At this point,
right? As opposed to waiting for somebody to either join this other side, and then that is when now you probably have. I feel like sometimes they have just this file somewhere. They're waiting for you to say something, and then they're like, here.
Tumetoa hii.
Ni kama ziko chini ya meza mahali. And then secondly, even the number of withdrawals after this regime came into force, into power. Now these are the questions that Kenyans are raising, and they're valid concerns, which I think you need to respond to objectively.
Right.
Now, coming to his issue, the reason why you'll find most of these cars getting impounded. So for instance, now if you're driving a public, a PSV, it's not supposed to be tinted, and you tint it. So you'll find like actually, of course, you have committed the offense. This car is still has issues here, right?
Yeah. So it can't be allowed to be on the road.
Then secondly, you see when you go to court and they're saying you had a tinted car, they need to provide evidence.
Yes.
Because remember, even a traffic offense is a criminal offense, which the standard is the same, beyond reasonable doubt.
Right.
So if they're alleging that you are driving without this car is tinted, they need to actually prove that this car is tinted. That is why sometimes you see that happens.
Right.
But in cases where you find, like, for instance, driving under the influence of alcohol, they will pound the car probably because you are not in a position to drive.
Right.
But in many cases, even for my own people, I've gone to even to the station and drive the car away and actually deal with this matter later. So that is why you'll find that a car gets impounded.
Okay. Yeah. All right, as we close, in 30 seconds, what would you tell Kenyans? Tukubali tu ya kwamba we can't say no to bribes or what?
No, I think what I'll tell Kenyans in this is this, and I think this ideally goes to the Kenyan government. We need to provide systems, and you need to make it a way, we need to make it easier for Kenyans actually to get services. Because now if you frustrate somebody, which is deliberate, now they're only left with one option, to bribe.
Okay.
And then lastly, I'll also tell Kenyans, I think the police are human beings like you. They're not there to be feared. Of course, they have internal mechanisms of dealing with them if they're corrupt or if they commit a crime. There is IPOA, there is Internal Affairs Unit within the police service. There's EACC. There are so many avenues
you can report
that you can use to report these things. So don't fear the police. They're a human being like you. Just stand bold.
Good.
Yes.
All right, as we sum it up, Dr. Ari.
Yeah, I do wish to talk to three categories of people.
As we sum it up,
As I sum it up. A public officer.
Right.
A police officer, a doctor who is employed by government, be it me, an employee of the EACC.
Yeah.
Know that the position that you have or I have is a public trust. Somebody has put that trust in me, in you, serve. I want to talk to an ordinary Kenyan.
Right.
Help enforcement institutions in fighting corruption, and they do not engage in giving or receiving a bribe. Do not look at the EACC as the agency, but also look at yourself, what you can be able to do as an individual.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to a leader or somebody who is in a position of authority.
Yeah.
The Bribery Act gives them obligations within their ranks to ensure that they have put in place mechanisms that can help in deterring corruption. Let them do their work. By that, we won't have problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zero, we all agree we might not be able to get there, but at least we can contribute to making sure that we reduce the numerous cases of corruption. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the great insights. Dr. Kevin Omai, who's the last speaker, Officer National Integrity Academy, EACC, as well as Evans Ochieng Ouri, who's a driver. Thank you so much. And Brian Olang, human rights lawyer. As I always say, we might not be able to exhaust everything, but in our own special capacity and small capacity, we try to have these conversations that are very, very important towards making sure that we have a better nation. My name is Linda Alele. It was great having you, and to the point, I look forward to see you again on Tuesday. Do have yourself a lovely week ahead. Bye-bye.